Hi everyone, this is the part 2 of my series of videos touching on low carb, high fat and the ketogenics, specifically looking at women, and I'm just going to be focusing on stress, the stress factor. Sorry that it's been a while since I've had a video, just been pretty busy with my practice as well as emergency. But I'm hoping that many of you enjoyed the first aspect of the video series, and I hope that the rest will help all of you. And even though this is guided towards specifically women and why women may be struggling with ketogenic diets, I think a large amount of this basic information can actually apply to everyone. So just to give you a background of the exact area that I'm focusing on, so looking at the biopsychosocial aspect, I'm still focusing on this green area here, and that's the psychological aspect. I've decided to focus on the two aspects first, which I think are often ignored, and that's the social and the psychological aspect, because I think we focus far too much on the biological aspect, and we'll get there. But for now, in the beginning of the series, I want to focus on this psychological aspect. So, psychological, and the first topic, that being stress. Okay. So, if we have a look at this lady here, I am pretty sure a lot of people, and women specifically, can relate to how she feels. There are some great references that I have on these slides, which you guys can all check out, and they contain a lot of valuable information with regards to stress. But I just want to touch on the topic of stress and how we and many people feel and ignore stress, and specifically when stress becomes a problem. So stress is indeed, just if we look at the stress response, it's a normal response of every day, which can be used as a positive outcome. So this is just looking at different types of stress responses. If we look at the positive stress responses, as mentioned, these are normal stress responses. We deal with these stresses every single day. However, the stressor is short-lived, and we recover, as you can see, that's the stress there, and we recover back to the baseline. A second stressor would be something more significant that we may experience in our lives, and this is a far greater stress than our everyday daily stresses. That of losing a loved one, dealing with death, a major traumatic event, physical trauma. And as you can see here, there's a huge stress response. However, it is tolerable, so we deal with this over time, and as you can see on the graph there are some bumps along the way, but a slower decline back to the baseline. And then you get the toxic stress, okay, and this is a huge stressor, but it's a continuous, persistent stress response that remains present and elevated. This is pathological stress. This is most likely the type of stress that is going to be keeping individuals from achieving that center of health that I was explaining. And this would be, in the line of physical, emotional abuse, that is chronic, non-ending exposure to common and repeating violent events. So just I like this slide. It's actually from an app, which is you can follow this webpage and use that app. But anyways, it just shows the different responses that our bodies have on stress and how it affects the different organs. So if we look at that short-term stress response on the left here, just to give you guys an indication. So the stress physically affects our hypothalamus in the brain. Okay, and this hypothalamus then sends signals to the spinal cord, down the spinal cord, which then goes to the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands then release Adrenaline and norepinephrine. So this is a short-term stress response. You can think of a burglar breaking into the house and there's an acute stressor right now. This is what happens. So pay attention here, rising of blood sugar levels, okay, higher blood pressure, faster breathing, faster heart rate, therefore faster metabolism. Our pupils dilate, increase attention, and digestion inhibits. Okay, so this would be an adequate stress response. If we compare this to a long-term stress response, and this is the abnormal stress response, once again, that is affecting the hypothalamus, okay, and this causes the hypothalamus to release a hormone in the body, ACTH. This hormone then goes to the anterior pituitary gland, which then sends signals to the adrenal cortex, once again on the kidneys, to release a different hormone, a hormone called cortisol and aldosterone, which are very linked. And like I said, I'm not going to be focusing on the in-depth science of how these hormones work for my talk, but just to give you guys an indication what that does to the human body. Again, higher blood volume all of a sudden, so not just only blood pressure, also inhibits and affects the body's way of processing proteins as well as fat, and how we change these proteins and fats into glucose, furthermore leading to a more chronic increase in the blood sugar level, and once again immunosuppression, decrease the immune system. This is why people are chronically sick, are most likely and often always extremely stressed, which leads to cardiovascular disease and other problems. Okay, this is just another slide which touches on that. Once again, the limbic system in the brain, the stress response, CRH, pituitary, ACTH, adrenal cortex, and once, as mentioned, affects inflammation, glucose metabolism, and the intravascular volume on the previous slide. Once we look at this side, affecting our sympathetic output system, again the adrenal glands produces adrenaline, as well as in the peripheries the noradrenaline. These are two hormones. Increased coagulation. This is why we see people who are extremely stressed in that moment have developed clots and led to heart attacks. Increasing blood pressure. Specific attention here, increasing your insulin resistance. Okay, so this is the forefront of many of the things that I have spoken about on my topics. Endothelial dysfunction. If you followed any of my links with regards to the world experts in this topic, they are always talking about the endothelial dysfunction and how that's actually leading towards our heart problems and conditions, interleukins, heart rate variability, a lot of other things which has to do with inflammation. So this is just to show you that stress is not just a thing in your head. There are physical things that are happening within the brain, within the hormonal pathways of the body, which affect how the body works. Okay, so we think, okay, how do we deal with the stress? Okay, often different people respond differently, and mostly what they found is that a lot of people who do not deal with stress well have obviously poor coping mechanisms to these stresses. But basic and just screening over easy ways of trying to deal with these stresses. Getting a hobby. Often people just forget that they ever had a hobby or don't have a hobby, and this is an extremely important aspect which can help. Volunteering. Through this you meet different people, networking, and you can gain some really important support through the people that you may meet through volunteering, and by doing an act of good. We know that this has some direct relationship to the body's ability to release norepinephrine as well as dopamine and make us feel better. Exercise, very important, something that we cannot ignore. Exercise, there are thousands and thousands of studies showing the benefits of exercise in dealing and coping with stress. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, this is something that can be taught by specific people who are trained to teach individuals, specifically psychologists, and changing how we think. I think this is a big one that I'm an advocate, and changing how we think, and how we get to do that is actually what cognitive behavioral therapy is about. But I just want to focus on this. Once again, if you're stressed, the do's and don'ts. So by changing the way we think, you think of stress, okay, this is a threat, it brings us down, causes pressure within our lives, it's overwhelming, it's consuming, and it takes control, it's debilitating. Focusing specifically on problems always, and not fighting that stress, almost succumbing to it. Whereas we need to change our way in which we look at these stressors. So see it as something positive, see it as a challenge, motivator to change your ways or to think of something new, an opportunity to develop personal skills and how to overcome this challenge. Energizing. Okay, so focus, instead of focusing on problems, you focus on possibilities and solutions. Okay, and then in that way we can learn to embrace these stresses as empowering ourselves instead of debilitating. And this is a very important concept, which, I don't know if many people can achieve this, but if at least we can try, that's a start. The second thing that I want to touch on here is just music and sport. Once again, great way of networking, incorporating exercise as well as physical activity with social interaction. Very, very important. And then last, I just want to touch on that toxic stress that I mentioned in the earlier slide. If anyone feels that they've been a victim of tragedy or trauma, luckily in Alberta, where I currently live, there are a significant amount of resources we have available, and a service called the Victim Services. This is actually their link. If you do feel that you have been a victim of trauma or tragedy, and this may be holding you back in many aspects of your life, not only the ketogenic diet, you can go onto this webpage and you'll see a list of the contact details for each one in different areas of Alberta. If you're from anywhere around the world, I'd advise you going online, just a quick search. You should be able to find at least some form of support structure in your local area, who specifically deal with these things and will help you to manage those stresses. So, as you can see, this is an extremely broad topic, just touching on one aspect of things that can be preventing you from achieving results in something that you may seem as simple as just going on the diet, but there are so many more factors that play a role. Human beings, we are not simple entities and organisms, and we cannot just ignore other important factors in our life when trying to achieve a specific goal, such as weight loss, managing your diabetes and chronic disease and heart disease. So I hope you enjoyed this part 2 video. Part 3 will be coming soon. Feel free to comment on the videos, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks.